Unicode is something we need to talk about as we talk about data types because Unicode is becoming more and more part of our world. And Unicode has traditionally confused people in SQL Server, and because of the way our world is now, it's confusing less and less people. So I just want to touch on it here in just a short video and then send you off to read more about it if it's going to influence you. Now, this is one of those good things. Chances are this is not going to influence a lot of people generally, especially here in the United States. Now, anytime you see data types that have an N in front of them, like nchar or nvarchar, and let me just tell you that in a lot of Microsoft's examples, you will see the N in front of the data types. This simply means that what you're looking at here is a Unicode data type, and nothing is going to change from the functionality of them. You can do the examples, just take the N off, and you're probably going to be okay on 99.9% of those examples. Of course, whatever example you choose will be the 0.01% or 0.1% that it won't work on. Never mind that. Let's talk about what Unicode is. Let's go all the way back to when the computer was first being created, the personal computer, and standards were being evolved to push this idea out to the general public. And just like everything else, it seems, that has to do with computers in the early days, they were extremely short-sighted. Nobody realized the potential that these things really had. Everybody said they did, but they really couldn't think large enough, and that's kind of a common human characteristic, I think. But anyway, what they did to provide the functionality for us to use letters on our computers, real quickly here, in the background, under the hood, the computer only sees ones and zeros, and so they set up the character set so that the computer, when we press the letter A on the keyboard, it reads that keystroke and it interprets it or passes it to the processor as a binary representation of a number. And I think A is 61 or something like that. So we press A, the processor sees the number 61. Well, what's really interesting about this is the standard character set that they created for the early computers only used 8 bits, and it would represent 256 characters from 0 to 255. Because that covered English and all of our special characters and our numbers, and it had a little bit left over. And, you know, who besides English-speaking people would ever need to use a computer, right? So it sounded like a good idea at the time, so we went with that. Well, it didn't take very long before we started to realize that if we're using foreign languages that have more intricate characters to their alphabet, more characters in their alphabet, that we started to run out of space here really quickly. And so it became impossible to allow an application to cross international language type situations. And so Unicode was developed, and early on Unicode utilized 16 bits, which took it to 65,535, 36, whatever it is, characters, and it solved a lot of the problems. However, since then, Unicode has continued to evolve and get more and more complex and allow more and more space so that it can now utilize up to 32 bits or 8 bytes to represent characters, which gives you, well over 1 million characters that can be represented. And this is huge, because now we can write applications that can easily be ported into other languages, almost no matter what language is out there. Now, what's kind of interesting is, if I can remember correctly, there's in excess of 3,000, maybe it's 5,000, but anyway, it's a lot of languages in use on planet Earth today. And so it's kind of short-sighted to think, English and Spanish are the only things we're going to support. So keep in mind, you're only going to use Unicode to answer the question here, when should it be used? It should only be used, strangely enough, when you need it. And this, for most people, means when you're working with an international application. When you're working with languages that can't be represented in that standard 256 character set. And when that happens, you just need to use those Unicode character types. Now, obviously, there's a whole lot more to Unicode than this, but I just wanted you to understand what it is. A good place to start is to go out into SQL Books Online, read about Unicode, jump from there out into Wikipedia and Google and all those things, and then you can really start to dig into some sources if you really want to understand Unicode. But the bottom line is, Microsoft's examples will include these data types with N's in front of them. It simply means they're using Unicode types. I hate to use the word politically correct, but it just looks more international, I guess you could say. It looks a little more sophisticated, and it will work for a lot more people. So that's what Unicode is. It is simply expanding the character set space so that more and more languages and characters can be utilized in an application. So just kind of file that away in your information. Again, for most applications in the United States, we're English only. But there's a lot of companies have done a lot of consulting for companies that have offices around the world, car company with offices in Germany and that sort of thing. And so you will run into this, and as our world continues to shrink thanks to internet technologies, you're going to use these things more and more and more. So it would probably be a good thing to go ahead and kind of brush up on them.